the southern nations, they are usually produced for the Italians, not so much for exports. So they can have problems with starting the engine, for instance, in the winter, in the northern countries. That the French are traitors and collaborators, well, yes and no. During World War II, every nation that was also offered something by the Nazis was forming also some sort of the collaborating government. So the French also, the French right-wingers also used the Vichy as the opportunity to form a republic which would be more right-wing than the traditional French republic, which is usually, by definition, a little bit to the left when ideologically. So for them, well, for some small number of the right-wing politicians, there was also some opportunity, not only a disaster. So, and the French were doing relatively well during World War II because, for instance, in Syria, the goal was pretty quickly have installed his own men in place of Vichy men, so Vichy administration. So there was always some part of land which had a French flag, and it was either the Vichy flag or the Free France, the France Libre, the De Gaulle's flag. So the French have performed relatively well during World War II, and they also the collaboration thing is mostly connected with the fact that the Western European nations were not only persecuted by the Nazis like the Slavic nations, but they also offered something from time to time. So there was always a temptation that maybe they should be collaborating a little bit. So it mostly the Nazi politics was creating this difference, not the French themselves, the French culture. The French cuisine is a little bit exotic with the snails, with the frogs and so on. That's why they called froggies in England and so on. It's mostly because they expect it to be a little bit more northern than usually, but they are a little bit more frutti di mare, fruits de la mer nation. So it comes, maybe it can cause some confusion, and that's why it's ridiculed sometimes in the northern Europe, in Britain, for instance. Laïcité. When it comes to the secular state, it's true that the French have constructed one of the first secular governments, but the Americans have done it already in the 18th century, and many countries was working on this alongside the French. So when the French did it in the first part of the first decades of the 20th century, they were not alone. For instance, Brazil, Mexico, and many other countries were also working on some sort of secular government. So but it's true that because maybe it's because the French is, although the number, for instance, of 80 is very, very similar in France, Britain, and Germany. It's about 30% if the three nations. Maybe it's because the French like to speak much about secularity. They also can distinguish good laïcité from the bad laicism. The second is just fighting religion. So that's not good, but the laïcité, the positive secularity, is included within the vertu républicaine. So maybe it's most because the French are the most sophisticated about this secularity thing. It's that the people think that the French nation is more secular than, for instance, British or German nation. But it's not really. For instance, among the Catholics in France, there are much more traditional priests than in Spain or Germany. So it goes both directions. There are many good secularists and there are many quality priests, one could say. Well, quality or just very traditional, so very, very, I don't know, very devout priests. There is this